Our presentation is on Singapore and Canada Dry. My name is Jasmine Contreras with Christopher McLaughlin and Yang Lee. So why Canada Dry? We decided on Canada Dry because it's perfect for the Singapore market. It's the main ingredients in the product are familiar to the market, which is ginger, which is also often seen in Asian cooking. It's also a healthy alternative. The Singapore market has been focusing more on health concerns, so they have actually been getting rid of a lot of soft drinks because they tend to have a high sugar count. And with the ginger ale, Canada Dry, it is a healthier option for the elderly and children. So the first focus would be the business strategy. So looking at the business strategy, we will be looking at the political, legal, and cultural aspects. Okay. So first, it's the political and legal environment of Singapore. Singapore is an island city-state. The current president is Halimah Yacob. They have a Westminster political system, which means that they have an executive, judicial, and legislative branch, much like the U.S. Again, much like the U.S., they're involved in similar free trade agreements. So the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, they're both a part of that free trade agreement. They also offer a unicameral system of government, which offers a parliament house with members of parliament and a main speaker of parliament that would again, the legal system of Singapore is very similar to the U.S. So they have different types of courts. One of the main courts are the common, criminal, civil. Specifically for businesses, though, they do offer different types of business courts. So like mediation, arbitration. Any business concerns typically go through the civil court, but they can also go to the high court, district court, and magistrate courts, or a small claims tribunal. However, Singapore has been looked at for Singapore has been looked at for intellectual property agreements, rights, intellectual property rights. So they offer mediation. I'll cut that out. It's important to look at because the political system in Singapore is important to look at because it will provide the businesses with ease of entering the market. If there are any political or legal issues that need to be addressed, knowing the resources available would be helpful in case of any intellectual property right infringements. Looking at the cultural. So the main language in Singapore, the business environment is Singapore English. It has some variations with U.S. English, but again, it's a common ground between the Mandarin and between the Chinese, Indian, and Malay people. This allows people to communicate freely and again, there are also differences in religions. Singapore is a huge melting pot for different cultures. So some of the religions are Islam, Buddhism. So foods that need to be avoided during business transactions would be anything like pork, beef, um, and alcohol, as well as caffeine. Um, Business lunches are a big way to get to know your business partner, and they tend to be held between noon and 3 p.m. Um, it is also important to look at how the payment system, if you are the inviting party of a business lunch, you typically are going to be the one paying for the business lunch. Um, Also, be aware of how people are introducing themselves. Personal networking in Singapore is big, as that is how most businesses um, make their business partners. So, paying attention to how individuals introduce themselves. One of the big ways, one of the common ways the Chinese introduce their business partners is first by their title, their family name followed by their own name. The Malay will state their own name, then binti or bin, which just means daughter of or son of. Um, the Indian will typically stick to just son of or daughter of, and then their father's name. Also, being mindful of business cards. Business cards are an important aspect of the culture, of the business culture, and are typically received with both hands. Laying them in front of your desk or table is showing signs of respect. If you take a business card and shove it away in a folder, it can be seen as disrespectful and rude. Um, and it is important to maintain overall friendliness by encouraging small talk, as this is a way of um, the potential business partner to get to know one another. So implementation. Some of the ways to implement the product would be entering into the supermarkets, gas stations. Again, the free trade agreements allow for easier access with a few tariffs. Again, the market for Canada Dry would be focusing on a global strategy as they are introducing a product and having different manufacturing plants in different countries.
Okay, my name is Ian Lee. This is my second focus, operational requirements. This session we have 4 points we want to focus. Now we go to the next slides. The management instruction. So there are 2 management instructions. The first is the functional organizational structure. This is a function is most business usually do, and they have different departments, and they separate the function clearly. And this is good for start up the business in the foreign country. They have full the function and departments to support the whole business. And second one, geographic organizational structure. This is kind of for start up a small branch or business in the foreign country and hire a different the talent employee from each specialist area and to form a small group or a branch just focus on the product in that foreign area. So there are 4 the the company form that we can use in the Singapore. The first the partnership, and the second one is a solar corporation and the representative office and branch. So I want to focus on the solely proprietorship. This is really good because in the Singapore there's no control for the foreign solar proprietorship or the business in the Singapore. So that means they don't have control on the money transfer. They don't have too much control on the foreign business. Which business way they do. They only as long as they follow the local business law, that's fine. And the manufacturer, there are some local manufacturers in Singapore. They are the two largest manufacturer in Singapore as fast food, beverage, and regularly distribution in Singapore. There are two largest beverage manufacturer in Singapore. Those two manufacturers has a lot of labor force, and they have well trained the supply chain line, and we can use as the manufacturer in Singapore, and also they know how to run the business manufacturer in the local, and can save our company hire different employee to analyze how we can manufacture in the local manufacturer. So there are some alternative for the manufacturer. So there are four countries nearby Singapore. First, Malaysia is the most close to the Singapore, and Malaysia has a large area than the Singapore to do the manufacture. So there are maybe triple manufacturer in Malaysia, and the labor force is really cheap and a large plant, and they're really close to the Singapore, so they can easily ship the goods and to the Singapore easily without like a tax barrier and regulation. Basically, they are kind of share the same regulation. And Indonesia and Thailand, Brunei, they are kind of a small country as Singapore, but they have really cheap labor cost. And if you want to use their manufacturer, but however, their workers not well trained, not well educated for. So as we use their manufacturer, we have to train those workers how um, to manufacture the ginger ale those things. So there are some manufacturing factors that focus on how we choose the manufacturer. So first is location. Location is really important. If we choose Singapore as the manufacturer location, definitely will save us a lot of money um, to to um, to to in, to introduce our product into the market. And if we produce the ginger ale in Singapore, that'll be easier for us to ship those ginger ale to anywhere in Singapore. So infrastructures in Singapore, there's a established infrastructure, and they have a highway, subway, and highway system, the subway, and the train system. And transportation is easy in the Singapore. There are ship and train system and highway system, so wherever we can use is easy for us. And other in the labor, the as we know, Singapore is the first language in English, so we don't have a barrier to train the in the labor to learn new languages. And the education in Singapore is well established, and those laborers has like high level education, so it's easier to train the employee with a high education, so we don't have to start up new training program. And the environment and safety law, the Singapore is the number one, and the safety place to start up the business, because they have their law is well established. They have IP protection, employment law, and a contract law, and so many laws just control. As long as we follow those laws, we hire a local agent, so we're that fine. We'll be fine. And the strategy plan. So for the first the regulation, so this is a ABA regulation, and their control the beverage come from the outside of Singapore and also inside of Singapore, especially sugar level, and they control the sugar level at the same as the lowest they can, and also um, if if our ginger ale, the green tea with no sugar, that'll be better. So hire the local management team. So the team is the advantage is about they know how to introduce or ginger ale green tea into the market, and also what flavor and the advertisement, those things. And also, we hired a local management team to analyze this market data. For example, there are so many beverage brands in local. What's the most flavor the local people like, and how many people from different country they will have analyzed, so we can focus on the different people group and give them a different flavor to adjust or a drink. And swap analyze is help us company to analyze ourselves and analyze the whole market. The strength we have is the Canada Dry is well-known international brand, and they are potential consumer in Singapore because this is the new flavor and new things. I, we believe there will be potential consumer to purchase those things. The opportunity is develop the cultural formula flavors. And as I know, Singapore is the diversity of the country. There are many different group coming different country, and those people are mixed together and the flavor are mixed together. So we can create new and also a similar flavor to those people. They will be like it. And the weak the weakness is the local brand competition because there are so many local brands and the most of people already have that flavor, and it's hard for them to choose new flavor, especially outside the Singapore. And the elderly people and the children, they might like traditional one, and so that's why we have too many competitions. And rice is easy to replicate and the local flavor. So soft drink and those beverage is easy to replace because they they kind of have same flavors. So no matter no matter what the people like, they will choose different. There's no loyal to one single brand to the soft drink or green tea. And distribution. And there are two port operator in Singapore. It's easy for us if we ship the our products to the Singapore, so we can choose either one of them. Or in the different port, they have different the operator. So first one is the Jung Rong port and the PSA. So make us easier, we can hire an agent to deal with those operator. So familiar this their operation system, and we'll be fine. For the banks, so there are so many banks in Singapore, and those banks associate with the foreign business. For example, Citibank. Citibank, we have so many Citibank in here. That's why we can use Citibank to transfer the capital or money to the Singapore to our branch. And also, as we can see, there are so many other banks. They are international bank. They have fully protection of our money and capital in the city. And also, there's no restriction on foreign ownership business. That's why we recommend the solid proprietorship in the Singapore. There will be no restriction to transfer the money between the Singapore and the US.
Hi, I'm Christopher McLaughlin, and I'll be covering the financial considerations that we would be looking at. So, primarily, we'll be looking at the financial risks and addressing exchange risks. So, in a very general sense, the financial risks of moving Canada Dry into Singapore are extremely low. They're extremely low because Singapore is financially very stable and it has very business friendly policies. As far as the stability, they have the highest rated stability in the Asia Pacific region. They have low inflation, 1% in 2018, which is significantly lower even than the United States. high growth. Their growth is at 3.62 of GDP from 2017, and their unemployment is at 2%. As far as ease of doing business, they're ranked number 1 in the Asia Pacific region, number 2 worldwide in the latest statistics. Their corporate tax rate is capped at 22%, which is very favorable for businesses. They also have very strong, as was mentioned previously, legal protections in place, both for intellectual property and also for contract enforcement. Now, in terms of exchange risks, the primary risk for our group, for Canada Dry Singapore, will be transaction risks, specifically when our cash flows, payables and receivables are affected by fluctuations in the exchange rate. In this particular case, it would be the Singapore dollar. So foreign payables, when we pay to our business partners in Singapore, they rise when the dollar weakens against the Singapore dollar, and receivables will decrease when the foreign currency weakens against the dollar. So the ways that we address and mitigate these exchange risks, first is by just coming up with a plan, which is good forecasting, which is the foundation for this. Solid exchange movement forecasting 5 years out. And in our case, we're looking at 2 countries that are relatively financially solid and dependable in the US and Singapore. Assessing the impact of any of these fluctuations, deciding whether or not we will want to hedge in the first place. If we do decide to hedge, then we move towards selecting hedge strategy or strategies and implementing them. So some of the strategies that we could use to mitigate transaction exposure include the forward market hedge, which is where you buy a forward contract to cover the risk while ensuring delivery of a specified amount. And this is a relatively easy and common type of contract and type of hedge. There's also the money market hedge, which allows you to borrow foreign currency in the amount due. You deposit it into a domestic bank and pay it back once the payment is made. There's also the options market hedge, which allows you to buy options to take advantage of favorable fluctuations, and swap contracts, which allow for the exchanging of currencies at pre-agreed rates on a sequence of future dates. So for this reason, we are very much approving of Canada Dry moving into Singapore and believe that we can mitigate the exchange and financial risks. Thank you.